Planet Earth has been home to many, many wars over its relatively short time of hosting intelligent life. These deadly confrontations have left each nation involved with high death tolls on both sides. However, in the grand scheme of things, these wars were nothing in comparison to what was to come. In the Half-Life universe, there was a force, some say Union, much greater and deadlier than anything the population could have even imagined, and they would change humanity forever through a new type of warfare. How did this war start? What actually happened? And who was behind it? Here, we explore what we know behind the lore and story of the 7-Hour War. The aggressive and destructive nature of the Universal Union was felt by those who were unlucky enough to have been discovered by them. This combination of multiple species had once been free, but upon their contact with this dominating force, each had been conquered, mutilated and indoctrinated into new weapons, soldiers and workers in an ever-growing army. Many intelligent civilizations across the multiverse had fallen to the Universal Union's goal to conquer and harvest all sentient life. They had developed incredibly advanced technology as a result of their contact with these species, and these global wars were much shorter than the wars they fought themselves against each other. Planet Earth was home to the human race, and for the short time that humanity had evolved and begun to learn about their planet and the universe around them, they would not be aware of the dark shadow that plagued all life until it was too late. By the 2000s, science facilities had been set up and run across the globe where many advanced experiments took place and technologies were developed in order to understand their universe more. On May 16th of a year in the early 2000s, an experiment at the top-secret Black Mesa research facility in the New Mexico desert went wrong. This experiment resulted in a resonance cascade and ripped open a dimensional tear between planet Earth and a border world called Xen. This rift brought through the creatures of this border world that had once called it home, and they swarmed the facility. The personnel within and even a secret sect of the United States government attempted to contain the problem, and for the most part, they were successful. They stopped the resonance cascade and closed the rift, and yet, this one event within a secret government research facility would affect the whole planet. There were hidden forces watching from afar that had set events in motion that would be difficult to stop. The administrator of Black Mesa, Dr. Breen, had pushed his staff to perform this very experiment against their objections. This experiment had used a crystal sample that forced the scientists to adjust their safety parameters, and thus they had failed when it all went wrong. This was always meant to happen. This was no accident. While Breen may have pushed his team to do this, there was also a government-looking man that had wandered the hallways on this day, and he was even the person that had handed Black Mesa the crystal sample they had used in this experiment. This G-Man, or whatever creature he truly was, would appear from time to time over the next 2 decades to guide humanity and push events in order to reach a goal that, even now, no one knows. Outside of the disaster that was the Black Mesa incident, it appeared to be a regular day for the rest of the population of planet Earth. Then, something appeared out of nowhere that was out of the ordinary. A window into another world. These windows appeared all over the planet, and while they may have been interesting to look at and through at first, what came from them changed everything. From these windows came the Xenian creatures that had attacked the Black Mesa facility, and on sight of humanity, they struck. Head crabs latched on to the heads of anyone in the vicinity. Barnacles formed around regions that they could catch their prey with their long tongues. Vortigaunt acted in self-defense, and the various other creatures attempted to make this new planet their home after they had been pulled from their old one. This once interesting phenomenon quickly turned into a global barrage of hostile Xenian creatures as these windows turned into portal storms and flooded Earth's villages, cities, and oceans with confused creatures unaware of how they had arrived here. Just as fast as Earth entered a new era of war and defense from entities from another world, the governments of each nation sent out their militaries to protect their citizens. For the next couple of days, Earth's armies all faced the same threat, and they had to quickly learn how to take them out. The issue was that although the head crabs, houndai, and other less intelligent creatures could be taken out easier than the Vortigaunt, the population still suffered heavy casualties as portal storms ravaged the planet and brought through even more. Throughout this ordeal, multiple newspapers attempted to document and keep track of what had happened in order to keep their people calm and safe. The Times published their European issue, and the Terminal did their best to interview who they could to get a better understanding of these events. It was still not clear how this had happened. What they knew at this point was that it was a worldwide event, and the population should make their way into the cities in order to receive better protection from this threat. Due to the war, most of the information of what happened during this time was lost. However, it was documented that over these days, the combined militaries and Earth's resources were stretched much more than they ever had been before. Chaos and panic flooded across the globe. The planet had to fight against a new enemy from a place they could not even begin to understand without research. A sect of the United States government was aware of Xen as they had sent units in to deal with the Black Mesa incident. Their knowledge did not appear to help them in this situation. That is, if this information was shared. This still did not stop conspiracy theorists and scientists to attempt to understand how this had happened. These theories ranged from the meteorological consequences of climate change to secret science experiments gone wrong. Unknown to the masses, some of these were correct. The various governments warned everyone to stay inside and lock their windows and doors as more units were dispatched to clear regions of these alien invaders. In North America, the Federal Emergency Response officials encouraged citizens to rely on their existing food and water stockpiles before they made their way to attempt to make use of government food banks that had been set up. These were unprecedented times, and in blind panic and the genuine fear of death, these instructions were ignored as these resources were depleted quickly by the scared population. Humanity, of course, had a right to be scared. To most, these creatures were hostile. They had, however, been ripped from their homes and had landed on an alien planet themselves. They had attacked mostly in self-defense. Not only that, but they too just wanted to make this place their new home. The Vortigaunt were the most intelligent of the various species that had landed here, and they defended themselves against a scared population. In the matter of around 2 days, the portal storms had left Earth's resources and armed forces stretched out to an almost breaking point, a high death toll, and a panicked population. Yet, these portal storms continue to bring through new waves of creatures. Earth was at the weakest point it had been in for centuries. The resonance cascade had had an awful aftermath on the population of planet Earth since it had happened. However, the effects of it were not limited to this single planet. Xen had also been affected by this dimensional rift, and this amount of destruction echoed across the universe. The Combine noticed that something unnatural had occurred, and they made their way to whatever had caused the resonance cascade. As they looked over Earth from afar, just out of reach, they saw that this was an intelligent race to conquer. Not only that, but this species already appeared to be at war with the species that had arrived from the other side of the dimensional rift. Earth's forces grew weaker by the hour due to the Xenian infestation. It is very likely that from this distance, the Universal Union used their advanced technology to observe how this planet was structured, how it had divided borders between nations, and where the weak points were in each of these. This was not the first time assaulting a planet, and at this point, they knew exactly how to dismantle a system that had grown over thousands of years. Then, the Universal Union decided to strike. The portal storms that still continued to appear across the planet became the perfect resource for the Combine as they manipulated them to send through the first wave of their army simultaneously across the globe. This move confused humanity even more and increased the fear of an already terrified and struggling population. These were new creatures. They seemed to be more intelligent and appeared to be a part of a coordinated attack. In New York, Striders roamed high above the city buildings and fired upon anything around them, and as those who attempted to flee this region ran away from the chaos, they watched in horror as the United Nations Secretariat building was demolished by an orbital strike. This action confirmed to each governing body of planet Earth that this was actually a coordinated attack from an intelligent alien force. This worldwide crisis changed Earth as humanity knew it. In chaos, the food banks depleted, everyone stayed inside to stay safe, and the stock market crashed. As the already struggling militaries of Earth fought against this new foe, they tried to figure out if the portal storms had been created by this alien force, or if they had just been manipulated by them. Were the creatures they had already lost a lot of the population to the first wave of this invasion, or something new? As a part of the United States government had known about Black Mesa's exploration of Xen and had prepared the Hazardous Environment Combat Unit to clean up the mess of the Black Mesa incident before it had even happened, many questions do pop up here. Did they alert the rest of the population of planet Earth of Xen and the difference between the Xenian creatures and whatever this new force was? How did they know that the Black Mesa incident was going to happen before it did? Was there a larger plan at play here? And was this planned? The Terminal and the Times continued to document what they could and sent out issues of their newspaper to everyone they could to inform them of the latest developments. In these issues, they reported that prominent biologists and zoologists believed that the giant tripod creatures that towered buildings and the various other units sent through in this new wave of chaos were a species distinct from the lethally aggressive creatures that the planet had already fought. Many felt helpless, and even the attempt to understand what had happened at least kept their minds active as the Combine decimated humanity's military forces. Humanity was weak, but they fought. However, after the Combine had destroyed the basic infrastructure of this planet, they sent through their next wave. Dropships brought in reinforcements, more tripods appeared, advisors, hunters, gunships, and many more. This was their actual invasion, and the human death toll skyrocketed. On top of this, the Vortigaunts also fought against this threat. This species themselves were survivors of this universal union and had found refuge in Xen, only for them to face them again. As the hours passed, Earth's resources reached a breaking point, and the Universal Union's forces continued to flood through from the portal storms. Then came one man that would become hated by the whole of his species, Dr. Wallace Breen. Breen had acted as the administrator of Black Mesa, and it was under his strict instructions that the experiment that had led to this chaos had been performed. To the rest of humanity, this knowledge was top secret. Dr. Breen contacted the United Nations, and he told them that he had discovered a way to communicate with their invaders. Wallace did not tell them how he had managed this. The war between Earth and the Universal Union had waged on for close to 7 hours at this point, and in this short time, the leaders that remained of each nation were desperate. Humanity was on the verge of extinction if something was not done. To save their species, the United Nations gave Dr. Wallace Breen the approval to negotiate for peace at any cost on behalf of all the national governments of planet Earth. With the United Nations' permission, Breen offered the Universal Union the complete submission of humanity in return for their lives. The Universal Union in turn accepted this offer, and thus the war stopped. This was by far one of the shortest wars in human history at a mere 7 hours, but it was also one of the most deadly. Yet, could it have been avoided? Dr. Breen had ultimately been responsible for the resonance cascade as he had pressured his scientists to perform the experiment. He had also somehow managed to discover a secret way to communicate with this alien force, and after he had formed this shallow offer of peace between the species, they declared him interim administrator of planet Earth, their spokesperson that would be responsible for relaying information and keeping humanity in line. This had worked out pretty well for him. On the evening of the end of this 7-hour war, Dr. Wallace Breen conducted a televised interview that was played across the planet. This was the first of many pieces of propaganda he would create for his new leaders. Breen explained that those who knew him would know that he was not a politician. He was a scientist that was just lucky enough to have discovered a way to communicate with their new leaders. Over the hours of this conflict, he had seen the data and the extreme nature humanity had found themselves in. His decision to offer submission was the only possible course of action. Humanity woke up the next day to a new world order. They mourned for the lost and waited for more information about what would happen next. All governmental control had been relinquished to their new leaders, the Universal Union, also called the Combine by others. This war was as unprecedented as it was brief. The Times and the Terminal still continued to report on the events that had occurred. Psychologists and disaster response experts advised the public to continue to remain in their homes. Reports from North America showed that they were still not completely sure what this negotiation actually meant for their country or for humanity, only that this deal had stopped the war. In an interview with The Times, Dr. Rebecca Heavily offered the advice that any rash behavior during this sensitive period could likely lead to unforeseen and undesirable consequences. It was in this newspaper that the population of the planet truly understood what had happened and who their new leaders were. The Times explained that Dr. Wallace Breen had used his decades in cutting-edge abstract physics to negotiate the sweeping multinational surrender to the extraterrestrial force known as the Combine. Humanity had been saved from an almost certain fate of extinction without Breen's interference. However, there were many who were critical of him. David A. Ransoman of the University of Eastern Colorado's Political Science Department argued that Breen had no legitimate democratic mandate. His lack of political knowledge had led to an interplanetary coup, with him as the mouthpiece of this new empire. There were also some who left him support. General Stanley Thorberg, a former commander of NATO's forces, simply asked, "Would you rather be dead?" The general public believed that Breen had taken advantage of his ability to communicate with the Combine and sold out his own species in the process. He had simply been in the right place at the right time, and there were others that worried that this United Nations sanctioned surrender would not be enough. Earth had offered their submission, but what if the Combine wanted something else? They had nothing else to leverage. In an attempt to celebrate the fallen of this war, many musical superstars of Earth came together and called for interplanetary peace and cooperation with the Combine through an Earth Unite concert planned for the following weekend. Whether this event did take place is unknown. What we do know is that their concert or songs did not persuade the Combine. Despite their disdain for how these events had turned out, humanity had to prepare for what came next. This war had decimated parts of the planet. Important food supply lines had shut down, and the Combine's removal of the internet and communication had left each nation isolated. Humanity had submitted, yet still soldiers and local militias attempted to fight against this impossible, highly developed multiversal threat following the days of this war, but they were just too powerful. Over the years, the Combine relocated the population of humanity into heavily monitored settlements to be watched over and controlled. This universal union had taken control of the planet, but even they could not completely eradicate the Xenian pests that plagued the planet. Humanity had submitted, but parts of the planet still remained a battleground for control between Xenian forces and the Combine. Away from Earth, the Combine likely fought other wars, just like this one, and they took resources from Earth to help them in their fight. Our oceans depleted immensely as it was transported, and what once was a mostly safe planet slowly turned into scattered Combine settlements that housed humanity and Vortigaunts like cattle, as the wasteland between them became home to the hostile Xenian wildlife. Even now, 20 years after the 7-Hour War, only a few settlements are known of as a result of the Combine's ability to limit communication and information. City 17 was formed within a region in Eastern Europe. As for North America, the United Kingdom, or the rest of the planet, it is unknown if anyone lives there or if they even exist anymore. For those who refused to submit to the Combine's rule, they were sent away to inhumane facilities across the wasteland. Nova Prospect was one, once a human prison converted into a place of nightmares. The Combine, of course, offered those who believed in the vision of the Universal Union a place in their army. Each rank offered more power, but it came with biological modifications and memory adaptation. Humanity was an effective resource to have, and in order to keep their population controlled, after thorough analysis of the biological structure of this newly acquired species, the Universal Union installed a suppression field in order to stop pregnancy in the human race altogether, and chemicals were inserted into the water supply to make humanity forgetful, a tactic to make them more submissive. If humanity forgot why they hated the Combine, they would be more likely to serve them. Over the span of just 7 hours, humanity submitted to an alien race. All they had to do was submit in order to live. While many do believe this was just an awful chance encounter that had led to the downfall of humanity, was it? The 7-Hour War was a legendary yet deadly event that changed the future of planet Earth forever. While brief, it not only showed humanity how small they actually were in the grand structure of the universe, but it also pushed the brave few of the population to come together to fight against a seemingly impossible enemy. Humanity did lose in the initial war that waged just as long as a school day or a typical work shift. However, 20 years later, it led the species of this little blue planet to jump up the technological ladder to form an army to counter the Universal Union, a human and Vortigaunt army forged in the fires of the overwhelming chaos around them. By the accounts of most of those involved during the Black Mesa incident and the subsequent war, some may speculate that this awful moment in human history was simply a part of a perfectly orchestrated plan by a powerful group. Few knew of the G-Man, but for those who did encounter him, mostly the higher members of the Resistance, they would know that he put the pieces in place for the resonance cascade to occur in order for himself and his employers to acquire the power of the border world of Xen for themselves. Dr. Breen was also aware of this man, and he used this catastrophe to leverage a position of power with the Combine in humanity's weakest moments. The question that remains is, was Breen truly one of the masterminds behind the 7-Hour War, or was he just another piece in the G-Man's plan? Furthermore, the Combine knew of the G-Man and had prepared a prison for him in the event they ever encountered him. A strong prison designed to hold only the most powerful of creatures with the ability to quickly move through space, freeze time and nudge the past, present and future, abilities the G-Man used frequently. He had seen the arrival of the Combine on planet Earth as a result of the resonance cascade. There had to be a reason for him to push this to happen. Regardless, this moment changed humanity and forged a powerful resistance over the course of 20 years that would do almost anything in their power to claim their planet back. The 7-Hour War is one of 4 of the most important events in the entire Half-Life timeline, the other 3 being the Black Mesa incident, the Uprising, and GLaDOS's takeover of Aperture Science. I love the idea of the 7-Hour War and the Combine, at least in a fictional sense. A vast army that has the capability to destroy and dismantle the entirety of any intelligent civilization they encounter. I hope that in our lifetime, if we are to meet life from another planet, they will be peaceful. I like telling these stories. I would not like to live through them. As a person obsessed with the lore of this universe, it is a little frustrating that not a lot of information has been released about the war. Half-Life Alyx was great, but the best part about it were the newspapers scattered around that gave us a better insight into what actually happened before, during, and after the conflict. Humanity was confused even right at the start of the Xenian assault, and what I liked about the realism of the reporting of the events through the newspapers is that even they were trying to figure out if the Combine and Xenian creatures were connected, something even I had not considered. It is also interesting to know that even the day of the invasion and the days that followed, television interviews and newspaper articles were still broadcast to the public. It makes sense really, as the Combine took more control of the planet and learned more of how humanity functioned. They would slowly adapt and control everything their newly conquered species did. This was a great story to cover, and as I said with my last videos on the Black Mesa Instant and the dropship, I have thrown a few of my own theories in there based on established lore from other parts of the Half-Life universe. For these, I have used words such as likely, suggested, or believed. This was the lore and story behind the 7-hour war. If you enjoyed this, then please leave a like, leave your thoughts in the comment section below, and even share it with another Half-Life fan if you can. If you disagreed or genuinely disliked this, then also let me know in the comments and leave a dislike. I appreciate you watching the video regardless of how you felt about it. Also, subscribe for more content like this too. As usual, I would like to thank my amazing gold tier patrons and channel members who got access to this video about a week early. The best resistance fighters you could ask for: Jonas, Lewis, Queen Arby, Fluffy the Dragon, Chicken Guy 791, Ruben Mendoza, Duke, Toadnut, Orin X, Azu, Karatana, AJ, Verona, Comfy, and BG Games. Now, what did you think of this lore? Do you think the war would have gone differently if Gordon Freeman was involved? And what would you like me to cover next? This is where our story ends. Check back next week for a new one.